guys? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's get into another episode of the Chitty Chat, okay? So in this episode or this video, we're going to be talking about part 2 and the final part of the Nene and Carlos King's interview. We're also going to be talking about people's responses to part 1. We're going to talk about Claudia Jordan's response as well as Miss Cynthia Bailey's response. So let's get into it. Like I said in the intro, y'all, people had some responses towards Nene. So first up, let's talk about Miss Cynthia. So Cynthia was on 2 T's in a Pod, which is the podcast that is hosted by Tamra Judge, who's from OC, Real Housewives of OC, and then Teddy Mellencamp from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She's no longer a part of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, but we know Tamra just got back on the OC. So Teddy decided to ask Cynthia, because she was a guest of theirs, like, girl, what do you have to say about what Nene said about you stopping people's bags, specifically hers? So I'm gonna play that audio for you guys, and then we're gonna talk about it.
Looked like Nene was more of a... Nene Leaks was on Carlos King. It was just released, and this is what she had to say about you.
What?
She loved Cynthia like a sister, that it looked like Nene was more of a leader in their friendship, but it was quite different than what it seemed. I'm okay with this statement. However, then it goes, what?
So far, so good. Keep going.
Then she says she will never be friends with Cynthia again because Cynthia tried to get Nene fired and stop her bag. She could work with her again, but never respect her. She said Cynthia had an alliance with producers. What is your response on this?
Okay, I almost don't even want to respond because it's so ridiculous. First of all, I'm the first person to give Nene Leaks her flowers. Whether or not she will give me even the water to put some flowers in. Okay? I don't even think I can get the water, but I'm the first to say, when you think of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, you think of Nene Leaks, period. The woman definitely put the show on the map, okay? She's amazing TV. Her personality is off the chain. She's good TV. And when we were friends, it was great. And I never say anything but that. So, first of all, number one, I don't have the power to get Nene Leaks fired from anything. I couldn't get Nene Leaks fired from Taco Bell, okay?
You're like, I couldn't even keep myself hired.
I mean, okay, first of all, I'm not even on the show. So if I have all this power, how am I not even on the show anymore? But anyway, make it make sense. So first of all, I don't have the power to tell a network what to do with an incredible talent like such as Nene Leaks, who clearly is amazing TV. And if I did, let's just say I did for some insane reason, have this power to control the network and make them fire her or try to convince them to, why would I want to? The most successful shows we had on Housewives was when she was a part of the cast. Actually, right. But we were friends too.
That's what Cynthia had to say about what Nene is alleging. And then Claudia Jordan decided to jump into the chat and give her 2 cents. So she said this: Nene plays victim every single time, has actively and publicly campaigned to get people fired or demoted. And then when she was outside looking in, she wanted to bring up Black women sticking together, George Floyd, and crying racism. Girl, bye. Cynthia has been a real one. She actually should have been dropped her loyalty to this narcissist years ago, but remained classy. Now me, I would have been unleashed on her, as disrespectful as she's been. This is just a case of extreme narcissistic personality disorder where she is never wrong and everyone must be plotting against her. She's never done anything wrong to anyone. Straight BS. We all seen it, so stop the cap. All right, y'all. So you heard what Cynthia had to say. You heard what Claudia had to say. And we already know what Nene has to say. And I can see it from all 3 sides. I've been trying to formulate how to say what's been floating in my mind. You know, I've been filming this section, like I filmed this section like 3 or 4 times because I just feel like it doesn't make sense, but I'm gonna get it out there. I get where Cynthia's coming from, where she's like, girl, if I really had the power to kick you off the show, wouldn't you think I would still be on the show? And I thought we had moved to a place where like we're not friends, but we cool, like, you know, in a sense. But it is disheartening to hear that she feels as though I got her off the show. I can also see Claudia speaking about like Nene's a perpetual victim. Cynthia is a real one. She should have been done with Nene a long time ago. And I can also see Nene being like, well, girl, they bumped me down to 6 episodes. I'm asking them why I'm getting bumped down to 6 episodes. No one's saying anything other than I'm unhappy. And now it is feeling like y'all are conspiring or colluding, shout out to Mayetta, to get me off the show. And the reason why I say I can see it from all 3 sides is because I've learned as I've gotten older that perspective is everything. Like, people can watch the same movie and get 3 different views or 3 different meanings from one movie that everybody watched at the same time. So all of these things could be true in some sense. But I will say though is I feel like Claudia need to shut up when it comes to Nene. Like, every time there's something about Nene in the press, Claudia got something to say. It's like, girl, we get it. You hate the lady. Like, why do you always feel like you got to add your 2 cents? And the funny thing is, to call Nene a narcissist is funny coming from Claudia, because from time to time I watch Fox Soul, that show that she has with, I don't know the name of it. I think it's like T Alert or something, with Funky Dineva and Al, where they, you know, they talk about pop culture and national headlines and all of that stuff. She centers herself in everything. She's always name dropping because she wants to feel more important. And it's like the things that you hate about Nene, you do the same thing. She acts like a perpetual victim. She always got a story about how she was done wrong and how somebody shafted her. It's like, girl, have you ever thought that you the problem too? So it's just funny to hear her speak about Nene in such a disparaging way. And there is truth to the things that Claudia says about Nene, but it's like, girl, you do the same. You might not do it to the same level, but you do the same. But let's move on. All right, y'all. So let's get into this recap and giving my thoughts. So it opens up, and we start off where we left off on part 1. I actually enjoyed part 1 more than part 2, but overall, I enjoyed the whole entire interview, both parts. So it opens up, and they're talking about the lawsuit. And Carlos is like, why are you suing Bravo? And Nene pretty much was like, I can't talk too much about it, but I'll let you know that we're still in like litigation. Like, so the lawsuit is still going on. She then talks about how, you know, she respected and loved the network and still has respect for the network, but she realized that the respect and love wasn't mutual. She then says how, like, you know, there's so many like checks and balances now when it comes to getting in contact with people at the network, but she didn't have that relationship with those in the network. She was like, legit, like, I could email, call people directly, the higher ups, like, because that's just the relationship we fostered. Now, I will say in the beginning of this part too, it was a lot of splicing going on, but I thought maybe Nene had said something that she was worried that was gonna jeopardize her lawsuit that she asked them to take out, but it only happened in the beginning of the actual interview, in the beginning part. So then she talks about how it pains her that she feels as though the ladies didn't fight for her to stay on the show the same way that she felt that she fought for others. She then talks about how, you know, only the lawsuit really is being brought up because I feel like we experienced unfair treatment. She's like, she was just like, and I'm not the only one. Like, there were other people and she was like, I have the text messages and the group chats to prove that I wasn't the only one that felt like everyone, like we were experiencing unfair treatment. So then she says she's still willing to sit down with the network and she's open to move forward. Carlos asked her, like, would you think about coming back to the show? She said something about the fans, but honestly, I wouldn't go back to Bravo because at this point, it's too much water under the bridge. I don't know what Nene is trying to get out of it. Maybe she wants to be on the show, but like in a smaller role, or she's trying to get a payout. Now, if she getting a payout, I ain't mad at it. Get your money, lady. Get your money. But I don't know ultimately what her goal is, because she went so far left with her accusations and calling out the network that it's like, do you want to be a part of it, or do you just want to get paid? So she then talks about a season 13 where Carlos is like, where did you realize things had went left? Like, do you feel as though it was season 13? And she was like, no. And she feels like things had went left a lot before then, like farther back then. But she said in season 13 they're talking about only giving me 6 episodes, and it felt like they were trying to phase me out. And I was like, no, like, why are you only giving me 6 episodes? And they the only response that the network could give her, or production could give her, was like, you seem unhappy. And I mean, like, I'd be unhappy too if I was only getting 6 episodes, because we know that they get paid per episode. So she was like, girl, why are y'all phasing me out? She then brings up how, like, I'm being phased out, but there's housewives that have fought women, throwing glass, throwing drinks. You've had people push Andy, that's Teresa, then people bring up like, well, you walked off. And she was like, she really didn't walk off. She closed her laptop and then walked off. But you can't even use that as a reason why they got rid of her, because we saw Teresa walk off the stage for for the newest season's reunion. We also saw Kyle walk off her stage for the last reunion for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So it's just kind of like, that's not a reason either. She says, like, I've never fought anybody. And then Carlos brings up, well, didn't you pull Kim's wig? And she's like, no, that was Sheree. I just stood there. But what was funny is one of my mutuals on Twitter was like, Didn't Portia allude to Nene like getting into a fight like off camera, like with Kim, like in a parking lot or something? And they ended up finding the clip, and it was like the season 8 reunion. And Nene pretty much said what I would have said: you ain't got no proof, so it didn't happen. Like, did you see it? Because if you didn't see it, then it's plausible deniability, and it's deny on this side of the couch. So I felt as though in this segment of the lawsuit, she made points. I'm not even going to lie. Nene made points, as delusional as Nene can be. And we'll talk about her delusions as we go further. But I did appreciate this part of the reunion, because to me, points were made. Why, like, I would ask, like, why am I getting demoted and only getting 6 episodes when there's been plenty of other housewives who've come back to the show and gotten 18 or 12 episodes? Like, why are you guys treating me this way? Like, it's not because I've gotten physical with people. And don't get me wrong, I bet you Nene was hell on wheels closer to the end, because that's the rumor I've always heard, that she was not very nice to work with, allegedly, at the end of her, like, her residency with Real Housewives. So I agree that maybe she became extremely difficult to work with, but I still think the network should have sat her down and verbatim told her, this is why we no longer want to work with you anymore. Because just to give her 6 episodes, to me, it's cowardly. And the reason why I say that is it reminds me of my boss when I used to work at a retail job, where she would only fire people if they did something like egregious, like, not coming to work, like always calling out, or they got caught stealing, or they got into it with a customer and they were in the wrong and they took it too far. But if she didn't like you but you didn't give her any reason to fire you, like you were coming to work on time, your cashier score was great, what she would do is lessen your hours to make you want to quit. To the point where people had to go get a second job and then ultimately leave that job because she didn't have a real reason to fire them, other than she just didn't like them like that. And I feel as though even if the network had major issues with Nene, and I can believe that she did, that there probably were issues with her, I still think because of what she gave the network, it probably would have been a lot easier to just sit down and be like, girl, this is why we letting you go. Here's your pink slip. Go box up your desk and be on your merry way. But to just be like, we're trying to phase you out just to give you 6 episodes and be like, it's because you're unhappy. That doesn't make sense. It don't make sense to me. So they then get on the topic of Bethany. And Carlos brings up how, Bethany be talking about the network in a negative light when it comes to housewives. And she does. She got her new podcast. She be dragging the network. But Nene was like, well, I had a talk with her and stuff like that. She was like, I feel as though Bethany, she says things in a better way. More so, it sounds like Bethany beats around. In the beginning, I feel like Bethany was like beating around the bush. She was beating around the bush until like she got to a point in her life where financially she did not need the network. And now we have her doing the whole union thing, which I'm not against. But I don't think she should be the face of it. But Nene brings up how, well, Bethany could say whatever she wants about the network, about Andy, and still be asked to be on Watch What Happens Live. She was like, we built Andy. And I agree with her on that. Honestly, before Watch What Happens Live happened and the relationship with Andy and Nene grew, we really didn't know who Andy Cohen was. Like, Andy was hosting the reunions and stuff like that, but nobody was really focused on him until Watch What Happens Live got a lot bigger, and then his relationship with Nene, it was a beneficial relationship. So yeah, and it is kind of weird that Bethany could say whatever she wants and still be rewarded by being on Watch What Happens Live and still promote her businesses, but Nene and them, but Nene couldn't say anything. But I also think Nene has to understand, girl, like you said, you are a blonde-haired black woman. No matter how comfortable you think you are when it comes to corporate America, they ain't never gonna be for you. You have to really there has to be you have to really solidify yourself with them. And I also feel like maybe the network feels like, girl, we built you. Because when I think about Candy's relationship with the network, they probably respect Candy a lot more than Nene, in the sense of Candy came into the network with her own money, with the legacy of Escape, with her being the songwriter she is, writing No Scrubs and all of that stuff, that there's respect there. With Nene, they probably feel like, girl, we built you and we can unbuild you, which they kind of did. So Nene brings up Kim, and Kim Zolciak, or KKK Kim, shouts out to the diva. But she brings up Kim and how they reroute the conversation. So she reroutes the conversation back to the unfair treatment statement, where she says Kim was given unfair treatment, where she was like, Kim was allowed to not go on cash trips and still get paid, whereas we had to go on cash trips. And nobody really wants to go on cash trips. She talks about how everybody is uncomfortable when it comes to going on the cash trip. She was like, it's going to be a high intense situation. You're away from your kids, away from your man. You're uncomfortable, but she was able to skate by. And she said that the ladies actually sat down with the producers, or I guess the network, to talk to them about how Kim is getting away with doing, getting away with doing things that they're not allowed to do. And I actually believe her in that instance, because we did not see Kim go on that many cash trips. We did not. We did not see Kim go on that many cash trips. I think Kim went on one cash trip, and then the remainder of her being on the show, she really did not go. She always had an excuse to not go. So I can understand Nene's frustrations and the women's frustrations at that. It's like, if I got to participate so I could get paid, she should have to participate so she could get paid. Or if she's not going to participate, you need to demote her or cut that check a little bit. So then Carlos then asks Nene, what do you have to say to Andy? And she was like, hey Andy, I heard you have kids, I heard you have a daughter. She called him Buttercup. I don't know if that's a cute thing that they used to do. It kind of felt cringe. I was like, girl, don't say nothing about nobody's kids. Even if you're not meaning it in a derogatory way, people always want to be like, you talked about my kids, or to say that the tone in your voice was derogatory. But she said, she has no hard feelings towards Andy. She doesn't hold a grudge. She hates the place that they're in. She hopes that they can work through her issues the same way that she was like, me and Cynthia worked through it, and we just came to the conclusion that we're not going to be friends. Then Carlos asked her, like, what is the end result of this lawsuit? And that's when she said about coming back for the fans. And like, you know, she was like, the check would be fine. I think she want a payout and to be on the show, to be honest. But I don't know. I don't think Andy or Nene will ever be friends or ever have the relationship that they had before, because one, you called that man, you alluded to that man being racist. You said he was on that cocaine. You made a lot of accusations, Nene, like you nuked the bridge that you and Andy had. Maybe you and Andy could have been cool had you not gone that far and just like stated your grievances, but you took it to a level where y'all could probably never come back from it, and you just gonna have to sit there and just take it in and you know, deal with it. You know what I mean? So the conversation continues, and Carlos asks Nene, like, do you watch the show again? And Nene reiterates, like, no, I just watched the clips. And he's like, based off the clips, what do you think? Like, how are you seeing, how do you feel about this season, or how are you feeling about this cast of girls? And she was like, she sees no stars. She ends up saying that, the most entertaining person is Marlo, and that's a problem. And then Carlos asked, like, do you think Marlo deserves her peach? And Nene said, yeah, like, she deserves it now. And he really asked her that question because I think maybe a year or two ago, someone asked Nene, I don't know if she was on like Jason Lee's show or somebody's podcast or somebody's radio show, where they asked her, like, how do you feel about Marlo getting a peach? And she was like, Marlo doesn't deserve a peach, but I guess now she says she does deserve it. She goes on to say that she doesn't understand the friends of the show. Like I look and I see them adding these friends of the show, and it's just not making sense to me. She's also like, certain people who are holding peaches, she doesn't get it. She then goes on to say, because Carlos asks her, like, how do you feel about Candy? And she says, I feel like she's overrated and overpaid. And then Nene says, you know, the situation that me and Candy had, that we had the different tiffs and tats that we had were very petty, but she can forgive Portia, but me and her can't move forward. And she was like, after Portia accused you of doing something to her, or planning to do something very egregious towards her. She then goes on to say that, you know, Candy doesn't excite me, but her family does. She said the comment was like, the camera doesn't love her, but it loves her family. She was like, people tune in to watch the show, they're like, oh, Candy's here, that's nice, but where's Kenya? Where's Portia? Like, where's Nene? Where's Cynthia? Like, people be looking for certain people, and Candy's not the top of, like, she's not the top of people's tongues, or not on the tip of people's tongues, basically. So we're gonna sit here right here on this one. I agree with Nene about there not being any stars in this cast. There is star potential here, but this cast is just falling flat right now. Just falling absolutely flat right now. I don't know if I think Marlo still deserves a peach. I feel like, I get why she has one. And I also understand what Nene is saying about it's a problem that Marlo is the most entertaining. Which is true, because it's like, she shouldn't be the most entertaining. And Marlo not really giving us, like, she's giving us entertainment, but it's not of value. You know what I mean? Like, there's level to entertainment. And then I also get what Nene's saying about friends of the show. Mayetta to me makes sense, but I'm not invested or interested in seeing Mayetta move forward. She makes sense because she does actually have a relationship with Candy. Like, we see her out on trips. We've seen her partake in being a part of Candy's groups, outings beyond the show. But, like, on the show, Mayetta just feels to me like a lackey at times. Her and King is lackey, and it's like, I want somebody to stand. They're like, I don't know. Because I feel like Mayetta could stand on her own, but she does come off like a do-boy at times. The same way people view Sonya, that's how I feel about Mayetta. So, and I do agree with Nene when she speaks about the Candy doesn't excite people, or it doesn't excite her, but her family, like the camera loves her family. I'm gonna be all the way 100 with y'all. I respect Candy and the things that she has brought to Real Housewives, and I also admire her worth ethic and the way that she propels herself throughout her industry, and actually multiple industries. But when it comes to Real Housewives, she is not somebody I'm that invested to watch. The only time I have ever been really invested in watching Candy is when she was having the Mama Joyce situation with Todd and Carmen, and Todd's mama had to get Mama Joyce together. Like, before Todd was added to the mix and the whole family discourse happened, I wasn't really that invested in Candy. I didn't really see it for her. Like, and then when I say I didn't see it for her, it wasn't like I didn't want her to be on the show. It's just like she didn't entertain me. Like, I wasn't entertained in her. I wasn't interested or invested in her story. And I do agree. When Real Housewives comes back on, people normally get excited to see what Kenya about to do. Like, when this season opened up, I think the only reason why people were excited about Candy was seeing her argue with Marlo at Beat the Bomb. And everyone was like, oh, snap, here come red-haired Candy. Because that season, Candy was on. Like, Candy was on that season. After that, not so much. Not so much, y'all. So they then start talking about how Roa pretty much has fallen from grace in a sense. Like, it used to be the #1 rated show on Bravo, but now Below Deck has that spot, which I believe, because if you go on Below Deck side of TikTok or Twitter, girl, they don't play about them people. They do not play about their captains. And now the #1 watched housewife show is Beverly Hills, and Roa is 3. And Nene talks about, like, the show is missing the fabulousness. The show, she was like, it's a lot of girls that don't have the it factors. And she said another phrase that needs to be on the shirt. She was like, a lot of these girls have the I, but they don't have the T. I said, come on, girl, put it on a hoodie, put it on a shirt, put it on a blanket. I want it. So she was just like, a lot of these girls, they don't have it. And Carlos says, there needs to be an anchor to the show. There needs to be a sisterhood. She was like, the Savannah trip is one of the best cash trips that Roa has ever had. You hosted that trip. You pulled things out of these girls and they looked for you for help. So she's just like, Carlos is just like, it's crazy. Like, I think Carlos says they just need to start over. Like, they need to start over with all new girls, because what we got right now ain't it. They then talk about, Nene brings up Destiny's Child, and I said this is where the delusions start to kick in. But she pretty much says about how, like, she was like, I'm not gonna call myself Beyonce. I said, I know you want to call yourself Beyonce, but she's like, I'm not gonna call myself Beyonce, but she ends up saying, like, there's no Destiny's Child without Beyonce. And I said, true, there is no Destiny's Child without Beyonce, and there's no Destiny's Child without Beyonce, and there's no Destiny's Child without, like, everybody playing their part to make it what it was. She then brings up about how the friends of the show, again, are confusing. Like, it doesn't make sense, the people that they're adding to the show. She says the show is missing the fabulousness, and I agree with her with that. She said Kenya needs a partner. And this is where I was like, Nene gets it. Carlos even gets it. Nene gets it. She said Kenya can give a scene, Kenya can give a read, but if she does not have a worthy adversary, she don't want to play. And she was like, Kenya looks uninterested. She looks bored, and that's what we got with her and Courtney on this on last Sunday's episode. She ain't really want to give it to her because she don't really care and doesn't think it's worth her time. She was like, even Candy, she was like, if you don't give Candy somebody to play off of, she just chilling, collecting a check. And she then, and like I said, the delusion seeped in. She said, well, I heard Marlo is reading Candy. Reading for the gods. I said, she not. I mean, she's made valid points, but she not reading for the gods. She ends up saying, but I know Candy can scream back, so I know they working. And then she always gonna give it to Sheree. She was like, and what it, because I think Carlos brought up Sheree, and she said, and what is Sheree doing? What is she doing? Not nothing, pretty much. But I agree. I think the fabulousness is missing from Roa. When Roa was in its golden years, I want to say that was like, to me, their golden years was season 3 to season 8. Season 3 to season 8. was their golden years, where it felt like everybody that was added to the show was putting in work. Like the ladies felt like stars. Like everybody felt like, oh, okay, like we here to give y'all a show, and a show they gave us. Now it does feel like that spark from the show is missing. And I don't know if that, like, I do feel like it's production's fault, wholeheartedly feel like it's production's fault, but I don't know what they can do if they want to keep these ladies to bring that back. Because there was something to be said when the Real Housewives came on Sunday. Everybody was glued to their TVs. Everybody was glued to their TVs. Like, didn't nobody play no games. It was like, if you got something going on between the hours of 8 and 9 o'clock, I'm not coming. Like, that was the vibe when Real Housewives was at, like, Atlanta was at its peak. Was at its peak. So we then get on the topic of Miss Wendy Williams. So I don't know why I keep calling Carlos Andy. But they end up talking about Wendy. And pretty much Nene lets us know that Wendy used to switch up on her. She thought her and Wendy was cool. They would be having fun. And then next thing you know, Wendy would get on her show and read her. And she pretty much felt like, well, like I like Nene was like giving Wendy a pass. She was like, well, that's her job. Maybe that's just how she does it. But I always told her, Wendy, you like need 2 or 3 friends that you are not going to like disparage, that you not going to read for the gods. Like, you need 2 or 3 friends. And she do. Because you can't roast all everybody. You need a couple of people that you have allyship with. She said Wendy called her around the time where they were substituting people in her show during her time of the show. And I missed the Wendy Williams show, in the sense of when I say, like, because I wasn't an avid watcher, but certain things that have been happening in pop culture, I would love to hear what she had to say, for her to sit on that purple couch and be like, how you doing? Like, how do we feel about this? You know, clap if you feel this way. You know, those moments. But she says that her and Wendy got into it, where their relationship went real bad when Wendy brought up the fact that Kim Kardashian, like, graffitied her Birkin. And Nene graffitied her Birkin as well. And Wendy pretty much said Kim has the funds to do that, Nene doesn't. Pretty much put Nene down. And they were at some women's empowerment event, and Nene called her Wendell, and they got into it, and they just went off on each other. And pretty much Nene feels as though something was said that, because at the time when that argument happened, she was in the works of doing a talk show, and Dunmar Mercury, which is the same company that produces Wendy's show, dropped the deal that they had with Nene after that fight. So that's why she feels as though Wendy Williams is the reason why she didn't get her talk show. She also talks about how Wendy did call her during because I realized I didn't finish my thought. She said Wendy did call her during the time when they were substituting people in and out for her show. And she was like, at that time, I just wasn't willing to receive it. So I wasn't interested in having the conversation. She goes on to say that, like, she would love to do a podcast or to do a talk show, but she feels as though, like, there's a reason why nobody would give me one. Because he asked her, do you feel like you're blackballed? And she's like, from talk shows and podcasts, yes. She was like, a lot of deals will come up. I'll be offered things, but they always fall through. Something always just goes left. So she's like, I don't know what it is. And she kind of gets sad about it. And she's just like, I want to eat like everybody else wants to eat. Like, give me the opportunity. Even if you think my talk show is going to fail, give me the opportunity. So this is where people felt like Nene was being delusional. And I don't know. I feel like she was, but I was trying to go there with her. You know, I was trying to understand. So Carlos asked her about Kim Kardashian. Before that, he asked her about what are your interests, and she said, TV, acting, everything in entertainment. So she talks about how she feels like she should be bigger than Kim Kardashian or on the same playing field as her. She also talks about how Kim came out after Nene. And then she also says that she feels like there was pushback for her, but doors were opened up for Kim that they never opened up for her. Like, she got so many opportunities, and I would get similar opportunities, but they wouldn't be on the same level. She brings up having like a Shoe Dazzle sponsorship, and then Kim having a Shoe Dazzle sponsorship. And side note, I remember when it came out that Shoe Dazzle, because I don't remember if it was like an article or not, allegedly was a scam. Like, the girlies was getting caught up with Shoe Dazzle. But I do remember them commercials about, like, I enjoyed the commercials for Shoe Dazzle. I don't know. I feel like this might have been a little delusional. Only because I looked up when Keeping Up with the Kardashians came out, and Keeping Up with the Kardashians came out in October of 2007. And then Real Housewives of Atlanta premiered. Let me go back and check. Make sure I got my sources right. Real Housewives of Atlanta. I think it said Real Housewives of Atlanta premiered in October of 2008. So Atlanta came on after the Kardashians. Maybe Nene is saying that like the rise to popularity was the same because they came out around the same time. Now, Nene got to be realistic. Girl, of course they were going to give Kim way more opportunities than they gave you because, one, Kim is younger. Kim is white adjacent. I mean, some people consider them white, and I do too, but they're Armenian, so white adjacent. Her father or her stepfather at the time was Bruce Jenner, who was a notable Olympic athlete. Then you had Chris being like, you know, a socialite. It's like Kim had a lot of... Kim had more things that were going to propel her forward. Plus, she had Kris Jenner as a mom, prepare her forward in a way that Nene could never propel herself forward without having the same resources and tools. So I don't know what she was trying to get at with that. She then goes on to talk about how it sucks that she's watching Real Housewives burn. Like, she was like, it just sucks that the show has gone the way that it is, and it shouldn't be that way anymore. Like, they need to find a way to fix it. They then play this game called Star versus Star List. So he pretty much says a housewife's name, and Nene is supposed to be like Star or Starless. So first up was Giselle, and she said Starless. Then there was Robin. She again says Starless, and I actually agree with her. Like, are there certain aspects of Robin and Giselle that I like? Yes, but do they give me star power? Not really. But nobody really on Potomac gives me star other than Candace and the Grand Dame, mainly because the Grand Dame gets the girls going. I don't know why, but she the star of that. And then Candace is so polarizing that it's like y'all make her that, even though a lot of y'all act like y'all hate that lady. So then she gets he says Kenya, and she says Star Hiss, like she's a star because she was a star before she got on the show, but being on the show didn't really help her. It actually hindered her. And I actually agree with Nene's assessment. A lot of people loved Kenya down. Loved her down before she got on Real Housewives of Atlanta. And then they just felt like she was a complete villain, and people began to say the most disgusting and disparaging things about her. Like, they just could not see it for her. So then she says Portia, and she said Portia has star potential. She said Phaedra, she says Phaedra is not a star to her. She was like, Phaedra just gives corporate baddie pretty much. She said Candy, she said she's never seen Star and Candy ever since they first met. And I also think that's a bit of insecurity, I think that's insecurity on Nene's part, because you have Candy coming in on this show that's already established, already has her money, already has a name out there, coming to your show, and now she probably felt threatened. So of course she's never felt it for the lady. So she ended up saying she's not really a star, and she's never seen her a star, but she feels like she's a supporting star. Then she says Claudia is starless, but she was like, she's nasty and she holds a grudge, but she can read the girls. She was like, she was like, and I want y'all to know, that I told Joy and Carlos that y'all gave the peach to the wrong girl. Pretty much giving Claudia her props, saying like that time when her and Claudia was going back and forth, that Claudia read Nene and she was like, we was going tit for tat. She feels as though she won the confrontation between her when it was Claudia versus Nene, but I feel as though Claudia won Nene. We just gonna have to call a thing a thing. But it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch. And I can give Nene her props that she said that was a worthy adversary. That she felt like that was somebody that was worthy of her time. That she does definitely feel as though Claudia deserved her peach. Claudia deserved her peach. So then Carlos asks Nene, like, what do you want your legacy to be? And she says, you know, I want people to know that I'm lovable. I have a big heart. I don't have any ill feelings. I'm a good person. And I fought for people. And she ends up saying she fought for Portia, Cynthia, and Claudia. Now, it does annoy me when people have to say I'm a good person, because 9 times out of 10, you not one. But I'm going to let her have it. I'm going to let her have it. Then Nene decides to turn the review back on Carlos. So she asks Carlos, do you think that she received unfair treatment or fair treatment? He didn't answer the question, but he pretty much says he feels as though the network underestimated them and didn't give them all that they need. He then feels like Nene deserves more. They start to really talk. He starts to give Nene her flowers and begins to start crying about how much like he feels like Nene should be in a different trajectory in life, and how it's not fair that the network is doing her this way, that he feels as though like they should be able to lock themselves in a room and everyone cuss each other out and get to, like, you know, say what they need to say and move on. And I get where he's coming from, but I also feel as though you can't expect everybody to do what y'all do. Because he said, you know, me and Nene used to get down in the mud, but then we could make up and move on. Not everybody is that way. Not everybody is that way, and not everybody is capable of that. So then they talk about like Sweet 16, because we know the 16th season is coming up, and he pretty much says, Nene pretty much is like, who do you think should be a part of the cast? But before they got into that, Nene ends up saying that like everybody needs, Carlos ends up saying that everyone needs a clean slate, that their people need to actually show up and do their jobs, that he loves him some Marlo and Sheree. And then Nene said you should say that your love for everyone is like Janet Jackson. Like how Janet Jackson speaks about her siblings, like it switches from time to time. He says Kenya is a star. Nene agrees, even though she didn't want to call that lady a star. She then he ends up saying that Greg and Nene was his favorite couple. He goes on to say that there needs to be more for Roa to be better. So Nene asked him again, like, what would be your favorite cast, or what would be your dream cast? And he said Nene, Kim, Portia, Phaedra, Candy, Sheree, and Kenya. And I said, I don't know about Kim, but I might be interested in this. They then go on to talk about how they feel as though that the fans were robbed from a sit down between Candy and Phaedra. And they even were like, that doesn't mean they had to make up or anything, but it feels like we should have saw them sit down, especially when it's like you forgave Portia. And like I've always said, Candy forgave Portia too quickly, because that's why everyone always falls back to like, well, you forgave Portia and she was the one that brought the conversation to the show, not Phaedra. So how could you be cool with her and not Phaedra? And I feel like Candy did herself a disservice for giving Portia that quickly. And I kind of do agree that they probably should have a sit down. I don't know if I felt robbed as a fan of not seeing them work it out or have an actual conversation, but I get what what Carlos means when he was like, the Vanderpump Rules kids, they went to work. Now they nominated for an Emmy because they showed the breakdown and the dissolution of their friendships and their relationships and that chaotic scene over there. Like, the girls should have did that. So then Nene talks about hers, and she says her group would be Portia, Candy, Marlo, Kenya, Drew, and then a new person, somebody with new blood. And then she says Mayetta and Sonya shouldn't really be a part of the show. They and then she also asks, like, do you think it's time for a gay couple on the show? And I actually think it would be cute to have a gay, like a lesbian couple on the show. I would still keep it all women. I don't really think men should be like a part of it in that way. Not saying I have any issues with like gay men or anything like that. I just feel like Roa should stay just women. So I would be fine with a lesbian couple being on the show and like seeing that aspect of Atlanta in that way. Then Nene asked him about his, like, does he plan on having kids? And he was like, yeah, I think about having kids. And she said, just don't name them Cash or Money. Because you know how the girls feel about the word cash with a K. So they continue the conversation about there being more for them. There being more for Nene and how God has a plan for her. Like, would she be interested in Love and Marriage ATL? I don't think she should be on that show. I don't like none of the Love and Marriages. Give Nene a whole new show. Give that lady a whole new show. But he then brings up about them touring the land together, inviting Deshaun Snow, Kim, Lisa, and Sheree, and doing stuff like that. I think a cute little show, a cute little podcast of Nene and Carlos recapping the different reality shows would actually be nice. It would be a cool podcast because then you get the view of an actual producer and then a reality star. That would be interesting to see. And then she tells Carlos that he needs to stop doing his interviews in his closet with his sneakers because she don't like it. Like, you need to invite people to a space where they can sit down and talk to you and be face to face. I think your show would thrive better. They hug each other. She tells him that she's actually really proud of him and proud of how he stepped out on faith and decided to do this show. And he says the same thing, and they hug and they move it forward. That was the end. And like I don't know if I said before because I've been talking for a hot minute, but I enjoyed the interview. Like, were there a lot of truth in there? Yes. Were there untruths in there? Yes. Nene is delusional. We know that. She could be delulu. But I enjoyed the interview. I really did. I think what annoyed me about a lot of people's take on the interview is I feel like a lot of people were just committed to not understanding her and not wanting to give her the opportunity to speak freely from a place of her feelings and her opinions, when y'all allow Candy to sit on the internet like the rest of us and give our own opinions about her cast members. I feel like in this interview, Nene wasn't being malicious or nasty or mean. I really think she was speaking in a way of where, like, this is how I see it. Now, like I said, she can be delusional, and at times she is delusional. But I do feel as though she was being honest in her way. And I appreciated that. Like, most of the time, if not all of the time, if I'm going to watch an interview, and even if it's people I do not like, I will go into it with an open mind, because I normally... in my mind, I normally understand that people, once they get comfortable in an interview space, they will speak freely, and oftentimes you will get a different perspective of what people are trying to share with you. And I feel as though in this interview, we got that. There were certain parts of this interview where I was like, oh, I can see why she felt that way, or why she would say this, or why she would say that. And there were other parts of the interview where I was like, girl, now, ma'am, that's a no. That don't make no sense. But I feel like it was a well-rounded interview. I don't get why people are now on the internet saying she's a narcissist. She's a professional victim. She's full of herself. We already knew she was full of herself. We already knew she had narcissistic tendency. We already knew Nene is a victim. She has that victim mentality. Why did you watch an interview if you weren't going to be open-minded to understanding what was going to, like, her point of view? Like, it was an interview about her and about her experience with Roa. Because the takes about her, well, she's sitting on that interview talking about the past. And you clicked on it because you wanted to hear her talk about the past. What are you talking about? Like, sometimes y'all don't make sense. Y'all don't make sense, and the dots don't be connecting. But yeah, y'all, that is it. That is all. Remember to be bravely authentic, and hop down in them comments below. Give me your thoughts. Like, how do you feel the interview was? And be honest. Be honest. If you felt like Nene was a victim and you didn't understand any of her points, let me know. But if you felt like you did understand things and you agreed with her, also let me know. But yeah, y'all, I'm out. Peace.